You guys are good to go.
Good evening. So nice to be here with all of you this evening. Ann Welker, Suffolk County Legislator, co-hosting our evening's discussion on this critically important topic. Thank you to Town of Southampton Supervisor Maria Moore and the Town Board, but also to Ryan Murphy for having initiated this great discussion. And also thank you to Commissioner Rudy Sunderman and his team at Suffolk County Fire Rescue and Emergency Management for your time and your expertise in sharing what will be valuable information. According to NOAA, in 2024, there were 27 confirmed weather and climate and disaster events with losses exceeding $1 billion each, impacting communities throughout the United States, with hurricanes being the most damaging. The loss includes direct costs, such as damage to building and infrastructure, but also indirect costs, consequences that arise from the direct damage, such as business interruption, loss of income, and school disruption, but also the tragic costs of human life. Tonight, we hope you will leave with a better understanding of how to prepare for these emergencies to lessen the loss. We hope you will better understand the preparations that can be made before these disasters occur. Thank you for your time and your attention to this important topic, and please continue to reach out with any questions or concerns. Ryan.
Thank you very much, Legislator. We're very happy to host this presentation here today at the Town of Southampton. Very happy to team up with the county and Legislator Welker's office to be able to put this on and to be able to make it available for everyone to be able to view online or on CTV going forward, so that this information stays live and available and readily accessible to people. As was already stated, disasters, and particularly weather-related disasters, are becoming, it seems, more and more frequent as time is going on, with changes to climate that we're facing and other factors, development that occurs in different areas that may or may not be, prone to different weather-related emergencies. So the information that we're going to share here tonight is extremely pertinent. We are in North Atlantic hurricane season in our area right now. So one of the big topics will be talking about, hurricane preparedness and major coastal storm and weather preparedness. They all kind of commingle together, whether we're talking about a severe storm or whether we're talking about a hurricane. A lot of the same types of rules and preparedness apply, and just, helpfully getting information out to people on what to do, what not to do, how to get information, how to be prepared, where to go for that information, all just little things that we're going to kind of, cover over the course of this tonight. Probably, I would say, a brief overview, because there's a lot of information out there and a lot of services out there, but an overview of what's available. And, thank you as well to my staff that's here with us this evening, representatives from the Fire Marshal's Office, Emergency Preparedness, one of my Spanish-speaking office assistants to be able to provide translation services if needed. So very happy to be able to provide access for the community for this important topic. So I'll let Allison kind of take over here and steer the ship. I will move from our town slides of welcoming and starting this off, and integrate into the county portion of the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ryan and Legislator Welk, for having us here. My name is Allison Abioli. I am the Acting Director of Emergency Preparedness. And with me, I have Douglas Shira. And tonight we'll be going through, as Ryan mentioned, a brief overview, but a very important overview of what you can do to prepare at home, how to be informed, know your zone, and stay prepared throughout hurricane season and all year round. So we will go ahead and let Doug introduce himself.
Great. Good evening. First, I'd like to say thank you
to the town of Southampton, Supervisor Maria Moore, and the town emergency manager, Ryan Murphy, for inviting us this evening to provide the opportunity to speak with you this evening. These are very important topics. These are very important times. We're reading a lot and seeing a lot about the weather in TV, so there's a lot of good things that we want to share with you. My experience here is I've been 40 years in the emergency management services. My past experience ended with PSEG. I've been with the county for over 9 years in fire rescue and emergency services. And I want to bring to this table some good things that we are doing at the county. But most importantly, what we want to have with you tonight is we have specific goals. At the end of our presentation, we hope that you have a better understanding of, first of all, who we are, and also a level of increased weather awareness, especially for what we call extreme weather. We want to talk about how you should prepare, how you should respond, and how you stay informed. So at the end of this presentation, you have a better understanding of the levels of awareness and how you can protect yourself and your loved ones. Okay, what we do at the county, we manage the all hazards emergency plan for the county that encompasses many different emergencies, not only weather related, but also man-made hazards, technological hazards, things of that nature. We coordinate that county's response to those. Our Office of Emergency Management personnel are responsible for the development of these plans. We operate the Emergency Operations Center at the county, and I'm going to show you a little picture of that. I take pride in that facility. That's where all of the coordination occurs when there's a significant event with the county. We coordinate also with the local, state, and federal officials in all aspects of emergency planning and emergency management, and mostly in particular to responding to an event, but also in recovery activities. You've been seeing on TV the word recovery. There's a few different reasons for or definitions of recovery, but recovery in our world is we try to get all the information from the affected communities and we apply to the federal government to get recovery funds for money to recover from an event. So our group does that big time at the county. This is the typical phases of emergency management. There's mitigation, preparedness, response, recovery. OEM personnel at the county, like I said, we work with state and local officials in these phases. OEM personnel are responsible for this. And when I discuss this, I also want you to think about how you, as an individual, can do the same things that we do at the county in these 4 areas. For instance, mitigation. When we talk about mitigation, we reduce the severity of an incident through public education. We identify hazards and vulnerabilities, and we work on improving infrastructure. So we do these things. Public education, we're doing that right now to mitigate certain things. So you, as the public, you can mitigate an incident by identifying hazards and vulnerabilities around your home. And we'll talk about that as we go through this. But some of the things we want you to think about was trees. Trees are beautiful, but when they start to get older, they start to have problems. Hanging tree branches are a bad thing around your home. So you can mitigate actions and events that occur around your house. Also make sure that drains are cleared and things like that. Basic things. So in preparedness, what we do at the county level is we write and update emergency plans. We run drills. We participate in training exercises. We do things like this. What you can do as a family and as individuals by preparing, you can create your own individual plans. We'll get into that also. Response. The response area in the lower right-hand corner. We work with other emergency and support agencies in response to natural or man-made events. What you can do in response is educate yourself on what you need to do for various incidents, how you can respond. So you may have to evacuate an area. What do you do if there's a power outage? So what is your response plan that you also do in preparedness, getting ready for an event, how you would respond? Recovery. What we do at the county is we try to restore the community to normal. You've heard that term, build back better. So when we do recovery, that's the primary thing. What we want to do is build back better. What we want you to do in recovery, very simple things. Debris clearing around your property. Also talking to your insurance company so you can recover easier. So as we at the county go through these phases of emergency management, you as individuals can do the same thing.
So these are some of the things that we may face throughout the year, that we go through that cycle of mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. Some of the natural hazards that we may see are hurricanes and coastal storms, nor'easters and floodings, which we have seen more in January, throughout those months along the coastline. And then we go through things such as like technological hazards, such as utility failures, power, gas, water, cybersecurity incidents, which we had back in 2022. And then most famously, we had COVID. So a lot of public health or human cause hazards, maybe a mass casualty incident. These are just some of the very few things that we face, we plan, respond, and recover from in emergency management. So some of the things that we do, our emergency management operations revolve around maintaining a 24/7 situational awareness of events that may affect Suffolk County. This includes weather threats, public health risks, or large-scale incidents. When an emergency escalates, we may stand up the Emergency Operations Center, bringing together local, county, state, and federal partners to coordinate resources and response actions. This centralized hub ensures real-time information for sharing and decision-making. In the event of an evacuation, we work with the American Red Cross to open up and operate shelters. We have about 28 shelters throughout Suffolk County that we can potentially open and operate should the disaster need that. These shelters are set up to accommodate general population needs and are pet-friendly where possible, which is an important part of helping residents feel secure leaving their homes, which can be a very scary thing in the face of emergency. We also maintain a stockpile of emergency assets, from cots to water to generators and sandbags, which can be quickly deployed and needed during an event or in preparation for one. We also have a mobile command center that we bring into some of our planned events. Mostly we'll bring that to our Suffolk County Marathon or to a festival, depending on the need of the situation. We have some protective barriers and drones that we also deploy out. These Meridian barriers are helpful for high vehicles in the event that someone may want to drive through a public event. Following a disaster, Suffolk County works closely with FEMA and New York State Division of Homeland Security Emergency Services to support long-term recovery efforts. This includes damage assessments, infrastructure restoration, expense reimbursement for under a declared disaster. Finally, we prioritize communication with leadership and response partners, ensuring that accurate and timely updates are shared across all levels and help everyone stay safe. Most importantly, I think Doug talks about feeding the beast. It's something that we do all the time down in the Emergency Operations Center.
Feeding the beast is with the press. We make sure that we communicate with the press and we provide what's called a unified message. And in our Emergency Operations Center, this is where we manage preparations for an ongoing or an impending event, such as a small event like a snowstorm. We activate our Emergency Operations Center in Yaphank for events like that. We also have activated our Emergency Operations Center for hurricanes that were coming up the coast, Hurricane Henri. We had a full attendance for Hurricane Henri, and Hurricane Henri decided to make a right-hand turn and go out to the ocean, which was very nice. But everybody was there. I think we demobilized like at 10 o'clock in the morning. But we were ready and we were prepared. The Emergency Operations Center was activated.
It was particularly nice, Doug, that it made that turn because it was due to land in Hampton Bays.
It
so
was.
Turned at 3 in the morning.
At the same time that you were open, we were open,
Yes.
and we were very happy that it made a turn.
And it was wobbling as it came up the coast.
Wobbles
So
matter.
it was pretty frightening the way it would move left and right.
Yes.
The Emergency Operations Center, as you can see in the picture that we have here, we have about 48 positions, workstations that allow the local, state, and federal government that can be represented in here. If we got to a situation where all of the EOC, this physical location, was activated, not only is this room available to us, but also the whole facility, the whole building within Yaphank is available to us to act as an emergency operations center. And I really call this an emergency coordination center because that's what we do. We coordinate a lot of activities within this facility. We gather information on what has happened and what is happening and what might happen. That's the big thing for emergency managers, is to think, what is the potential for this event? How bad can it get? So we make conversations about that. This facility enables the efficient sharing of information. It provides a single point. Most key thing is a single point for decision-making and determining a coordinated multi-agency course of action. It provides a single point of contact to identify, acquire, and procure, allocate, and deploy resources. So you can imagine if we had an island-wide event, there would be so many requests for coordination efforts and response and resources. We have to prioritize which works out well. So we work that out with all the communities to say, hey, look, here's the resources available. We need to put them to where they're most effective right now, and eventually we'll get that to everything. So this Emergency Operations Center not only is located in Yaphank, but it coordinates with all of the emergency operations centers within the county, within all of the 10 towns. And we work within what's called a state of emergency. Article 2B, administrative law, is implemented by the local elected officials. I want to make sure that everybody understands what an Article 2B authorizes us to do. The county executive, the town supervisors, and the mayors, the village mayors, are able to declare a state of emergency independent of the governor. We live in what's called a home rule state. So if there's an incident that a village mayor feels that he's going to declare an emergency, he can declare a state of emergency because they have the ability to do that through Article 2B at the state. So the village mayor can do that. The town supervisor does not have to, but the town supervisor probably will follow in kind. So a local state of emergency lasts for 30 days. It's declared to preserve public safety and thereby render all and available assistance to the security and well-being and the health of the citizens of the community. A local state of emergency allows the implementation of appropriate actions to protect life and property and public infrastructure, and to perform other emergency assistances, and also ensures that we coordinate with all agencies. It also allows the local official, he's now empowered to close roadways, implement a curfew, or issue a voluntary or mandatory evacuations. That Article 2B is very strong, especially for the lower levels within the government. And it's really a chain of command is built like a pyramid. The foundation is really the village. You have a village locally here. That village can declare a state of emergency. We go to the town, the county, the state, and the federal. So the town and the village and the county can declare a state of emergency. Doesn't mean that the state has to declare a state of emergency. So it's very home rule oriented.
And I think this brings up a really good point that any emergency always starts out locally. So it's always really important where, depending on where you live, is to go back locally. So if you're having an issue within that area, locally go back to the village, go to the town, and then we can escalate it there from there. We have a great partnership with the town of Southampton and all the 10 towns that we have in Suffolk County. So how we respond. So if an evacuation is ordered, we will get the word out. And this is when we say about being informed. We have emergency alerts at the county level, there's emergency alerts at the town level, and we coordinate that message amongst each other to make sure all those residents are aware of what is going on. The most important thing that you can do is know your options, know your transportation options, know where to go. First, we always urge residents to stay with friends or family outside of the evacuation zone. Normally, that's along the spine of Suffolk County towards the middle. You want to get out of the zone to a zone of safety. If that's not possible, try to travel out of town. We especially mean that for those people that want to come out here and vacation and explore all that we have to offer out here, but please either stay with friends or family or try to evacuate out of town. If last resort, we would open and operate a general population shelter. The theme, though, most importantly, is to plan early and plan now.
Right. Definitely plan early and plan now, especially if you're seeing this and you're a vacationer. So know your transportation options, the railroad, the buses, the ferries. Make sure that you know your transportation options if there's an evacuation declared. And that's all going to be coordinated through the county EOC and the town EOC. We coordinate really well with these. But it's a good thing to know that the theme that we're trying to express here is plan early and plan now before this happens. And we talked about, Allison had mentioned, you really don't want to stay in a shelter. And one of the messages we get out early, if we do have an evacuation, is to the community that does vacation. We want the vacationers to be aware and to leave early, to get out if we do declare an evacuation.
Yeah, I think it's important to just, reinforce that, Doug, that, we definitely work together to coordinate this, and one of the reasons that, the county is leading the charge in this part of the discussion is because when we come to particularly the topic of evacuations and the mass movement of people, that's not really something that any one area, unless you're looking at a very isolated, localized emergency, gas leak in an area where you're just trying to move people out of just that specific little area. But when we start to talk about coastal storms and things like that, we have to do it in a coordinated fashion. Those plans are generally not isolated to small, individual municipalities. Those are county-wide types of plans where we have to do that in a coordinated way. Think about it just like exiting a building and having, fire evacuation plans, and it's a 2 or 3 or 4 story building, right? You don't just make a plan for the 4th floor or the 3rd floor. It's a building evacuation plan because those people funnel into the next floor and the next floor and the next floor. And if we all we say is, well, we just need doors that are big enough to handle the people leaving one of those floors, that doesn't work. The doors have to be able to handle all 4 floors because everybody has to get out. Everybody has to get out alive. So the same sort of thing here. We have to coordinate that flow. We have to time that movement. When we talk about a community like ours in Southampton, where we have a huge seasonal swell in population too, we have to take that into consideration. And a lot of the software and tools that we use to plan for evacuations, like HERVAC, have those numbers built into it to account for seasonal swell so that we can figure out how many hours do we need. So sometimes it might seem like we're calling it really, really early, and there's sometimes resistance out there from, the general public. And we know we don't want to hurt, local economy and things like that too. So it's a tough decision to have to make when you have, like an Isaias coming in around Labor Day or whatever it happens to be. That's a tough decision to have to make, but we have to time it and say, all right, when do the ferries need to stop running? When are we going to hit, tropical storm force winds that, we can't have certain vehicles on the roadway? When are the trains going to shut down? All of these different factors. How much time do we need to potentially de-energize an area that might be very flood prone, like a Fire Island type community, or in our case, a Dune Road, area, if we have to take that into consideration. So there is a lot that goes into it. So sometimes when it seems like it might be like a really early call, it factors all of that in. And then on top of it, it factors in that we don't evacuate in the dark, right? Generally, that's a rule that we follow in emergency management, that we evacuate in daylight hours. We don't want to have to move people around in the darkness. It's hard enough to try and move all those people during the daylight. So we don't factor those hours in generally when we run these scenarios to try and see how much time we need. We factor in daylight. So just for people's perspective of why do we make the decision, when we make it, what are the factors that go into that decision? Because I think perhaps it helps people to understand why we do it so far out, or why we might be thinking about it. And this is also why sometimes we might announce a voluntary evacuation before we do a mandatory evacuation in an area, to try and encourage people to make that decision before we're telling them they absolutely have to make that decision. And it puts you in a better position to go to someplace you're going to be more comfortable as opposed to perhaps a sweaty gymnasium someplace where 3 days into it without access to showers or gourmet food, you're not going to be the happiest person in the world. So it might be kind of novel in the first few hours, but it's going to get old fast. And you're better off in a place that you're going to be comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah, just to add just a little bit to that, is the decision to evacuate is based on so many different factors, but we are in consultation with the National Hurricane Center. And we speak to the folks down there and also our local weather forecasters, and we get information, technical information on how much flooding is going to be seen, what the water level above the ground is going to be for these events. So the decision to make shelter, to evacuate an area is made with a lot of technical details behind it. So it's not made based on a haphazard assessment. It's based on a very technical oriented conversations that we have with a lot of technical folks. So just to be aware that it's not based on us, it's based on conversations with a lot of smart people down in the National Hurricane Center.
Very hard decision. But into going to what Ryan was saying, camping, if you want to look at it that way for the first few hours,
Yes.
sheltering or congregate style sheltering in large open spaces. So as Ryan mentioned in gyms, we work with the American Red Cross. We work with our volunteer departments, our community emergency response team, our medical reserve corps. They are staffed partially by volunteers and partially by our office in these shelter locations. Our main locations, these aren't the only locations, but these are our main locations, are the Suffolk County Community College campuses. So Brentwood, Selden, and Riverhead. These shelters are also pet-friendly shelters. So you can bring your dog, animal, or birds, no exotic animals, unfortunately, but you can bring them to these shelters. Additional shelters may open up in school buildings along the spine of the county. And we're going to go into it a little bit later about knowing our shelter tool to show you what those might look like in your nearby area. But it's really, really important to wait for those announcements. Please don't just get up and start heading to the closest school thinking that it's going to be a shelter. As Ryan and Doug have mentioned, it will be a coordinated message. It will be an announcement coming out, radio, TV, news, all across the board to let you know what is open and where you can go. Red Cross provides some food, water, blankets, and cots. And then for those with minimal care needs, right? So you would want to bring your medication, essential items that would get you from day to day if you were there for a long-term situation. And then, as I briefly mentioned, our pet-friendly shelters. So going back, Brentwood, Selden, and Riverhead, they're staffed by volunteers, the SPCA, but it's really important, right? We talk a lot about making go kits and preparedness plans for ourselves, but you cannot forget about your pets. So in the event that you would have to evacuate and you had to go to one of these shelters, you need to bring stuff for your pets as well. A cage, leash, food, dish, medication, vaccination records.
Right.
Some of the places do have, if you have your pet chipped, that's also very important. We can keep the records of your pet, God forbid anything were to happen. But it's really, really important to make a go kit, make a plan for your pets just as much as yourself.
So with the shelters, we take cats and dogs only, and birds. Or they do allow birds, and we keep the birds away from the cats because that could cause a problem. But those are the only pets that we allow. So if you have horses and you have other
Snakes
and
turtles,
other but
around.
horses in general, you have to have a plan for that for yourself. But with the sheltering that we've created with the SPCA at Brentwood and Selden Riverhead, it's just based on those dog, cats, and birds only. From a historical perspective, weather events that we've had here in Suffolk County, severe weather events, straight line wind events, sometimes they're called tornadoes. Yes, we do get tornadoes. And Oakdale in 2021, Massac in 2021. Between 1979 and 2022, we've had 30 tornadoes have struck Suffolk County. Not the ones that we have out in the Midwest, where you see almost like the Wizard of Oz type of tornado. But we do get tornadoes that cause some damage here in Suffolk County. November 21 actually was a breakout year. We had a lot of activity during that month. Tornadoes are typically a no-notice event or very short-notice events. The National Weather Service will trigger an alert system that will go off on your cell phone to let you know that there's severe weather coming your way and that you should seek shelter in a sturdy building, or go into a basement or the interior of a room away from a window or the lowest floor and cover your head. It's some of us remember those drills that we did in school where you crouch down. That's what we want you to do, is to find a wall in the lowest part of the house and crouch down if there is a tornado warning and it's coming your way. There was a tornado many years ago in Springs. I went to that, the result of that tornado years ago. We had water spouts in West Hampton a number of years ago. So they are events that do happen here. And they are, it seems that we're getting more and more severe thunderstorms that spawn these tornadoes. And remember, every tornado should be seen as a life-threatening event. That's very important, that if you do get a weather event and a notification that there's a tornado coming your way, treat it as a life-threatening event and take action. Flooding. Flooding seems to be in the news lately. We've had some events in Suffolk County where we've had flooding. If we all recall, last August, 18th and 19th, we had some flooding events on the North Shore in the Smithtown area, Rocky Point area. And you can see on this display here, in that white area on the island on the left side of this, was Rocky Point. We had up to 8 to 9 inches of rain in a very, very short period of time. And that house, yes, that's a house up in Rocky Point that was those people had to be evacuated from their house by the fire department because the water accumulated very quickly, ran down into that area, that low spot, and flooded that house. We had a number of houses that were flooded because of a very swift amount of water that fell within a short period of time. 8 to 9 inches falling in a short period of time will cause this, but it recedes very quickly. It doesn't stand.
And I think it's really important just to hit on some key points here, especially with this August flooding event. As you can see on the picture on the right-hand side, Suffolk County has over 109 fire departments, and many of those fire departments are trained to assist in these swift water rescue missions or to get people in and out in the event that they were to have flooding in this. But I think it's a really good point to mention that flooding doesn't always just happen on the South Shore. This was an event that occurred on the North Shore in the middle of the night, and people were caught off guard. These basements quickly flooded up. A lot of people lost important records down there. So just because it hasn't happened to you in the past, couple months or years, doesn't mean that it won't happen at all. So it's really important to pay attention to our warnings, whether it's from the town or from the county. Listen to the news. Make sure you have a plan. I would not be leaving anything, any of your important documents downstairs in those basements.
Exactly.
And understand where you live and where those resources are. That was a really key point from this event that we've learned from our office and the residents along the North Shore.
Most definitely. Thunderstorms. Severe thunderstorms produce damaging wind and large hail. Last year, the thunderstorm that was in my neighborhood put inch to an inch and a half worth of hail. It was pretty interesting to see that. When you do get these notifications of severe thunderstorms, you definitely need to take shelter in a sturdy structure away from windows. A basement or a cellar would be the best, or a basement would be the best thing. Being in a vehicle is a safer place than being outside. However, when you do get a severe thunderstorm alert and one is coming in your area, do not go outside. Wind-blown hazards and hail are very significant. There are many reports of people that have been outside during thunderstorms just to do something silly in their backyard very quickly, and they're getting hit with tree debris. And thunderstorms are overwhelming. The winds are overwhelming. You really can't hear things. So you think you're going to hear something that that you can get away from, but thunderstorms are a very severe natural phenomenon, and we seem to be getting more severe thunderstorms as we go along here, and they are very, very severe, with lightning especially. And most importantly, we've lived through this recently: extreme heat. Extreme heat and humidity take a toll on us. You should know the signs of heat illness and drink plenty of water. That's very important when we're outside drinking water. Hydrate is a big thing. Reschedule your outdoor activities and your work. Strenuous activities until a certain time of day where you can do those things. Extreme heat can catch you and you don't realize the impact on your body when you're outside and the temperatures are getting close to 100 degrees. Seek shelter from the sun, preferably in a location where there's air conditioning. We happen to be very, very fortunate in the county that we've partnered with all the libraries on the island. So, for instance, you have Rogers Memorial Library in Southampton, you have Hampton Bays Library, you have West Hampton Free Library, you have Quogue Library. These are called cooling spaces. So when we have an extreme heat event, these libraries become cooling spaces, and the county will make notification about that. And if you're out and about and you need to take relief from the heat, you can go to the library, and they'd be more than welcome to have you come and sit down for a little bit, read a magazine or whatever, and relax. The most important thing about extreme heat is never leave your children or disabled adults or pets in parked cars, unattended vehicles. You've seen recently in the news that people are still doing this. I can't understand why they're doing this, leaving people inside a vehicle. Obviously, it's illegal. You're going to get arrested if you do it, but it's important that you do not do that.
Doug, I think it's important to note that that's not real, just extreme heat. Even when people hear extreme heat, they think, 100-degree temperatures. On a 80-degree day inside a closed-up car, the temperature can rise rapidly and put people inside, whether it's children, whether it's the elderly, anybody that happens to be part of a vulnerable population group, whether it's a pet, and can put them in harm's way very quickly. So when we talk extreme heat, obviously, we also don't want to put people into vehicles and leave them in vehicles in those types of situations. But in general, when we start to get into the summer weather, the hotter months of the year, and we start to see days that are, 80 degrees or better, we would advise against that behavior altogether, because the heat can rise rapidly in a vehicle in those types of circumstances.
Absolutely. Wildfires. So as you can see, there was the 95 wildfires. Then in 2012, we had the Manorville wildfire. And most recently in 2025, we had that West Hampton pine fire. Being that it is summer, it's really important to remember that if you are having things like a campfire or grilling or barbecue, you are operating those safely. Campfires, you want to drown them out before you go inside. Barbecue should be away from the house. I think recently we just had an apartment complex with a barbecue on the back, was a little bit too close to the siding and did set it up on fire. And when these fires happen, depending on the conditions outside, if there's a red flag warning or an extreme warning for fires, they will happen quickly and they will grow as fast as possible. It's something that we work with all of our local departments. I think the West Hampton Pine Fire, we had about 90 agencies out there coordinating this effort. And as quickly as it did start was as quickly as we were able to get out there. Our office was out there, the town was out there, trying to respond to, monitor the event, and issue warnings if need be for this. We're dealing with this a lot with the southern pine beetles and going out there and trying to mitigate hazards out there throughout the county so that we don't have a similar situation occur this summer or next year.
I think also just to, tailor specifically to our seasonal population that comes out to the town of Southampton. We enjoy a huge amount of visitors from all over the world. And we get visitors that maybe aren't as familiar with using barbecue grills or even a fire pit outside. And it's not uncommon for us to have problems where somebody disposes of charcoal from a charcoal grill in a way that's not appropriate, that then leads to a fire because they think that it's extinguished, or cold and put it into a garbage can, and then it ends up spreading to a house or something to that effect. or they just don't know how to manipulate a grill effectively because they're not used to using it as a cooking appliance. If you're not sure on how to do something like that, and it's involving the use of fire, the use of setting, something on fire, whether it's firewood in a fire pit or whatever. If you don't know how to do it, avoid using that, and if you complete that activity, whether it's using the grill, whether it's a charcoal grill, a gas grill, whether it's a fire pit, make sure that everything is fully extinguished. Drown it out. Make sure that it's good before you assume that it isn't, before you just assume, and don't put yourself in a situation where the embers from that are going to blow around in the middle of the night when we have dry conditions out, lead to either a wildfire or set the house on fire or something like that.
Yeah. Even cigarettes too, right? Making sure those are extinguished, like don't, flick them out the window or things of that nature.
Hurricanes and nor'easters. That's the topic for this year. But nor'easters happen anytime during the year. And as you can see from the slide here, Tropical Storm Henri, which we talked about, Tropical Depression Aida. Then we had nor'easters in October 2021. You can see that picture in Hampton Bays. When you see water like that, do not drive down that street. You have no idea how deep it is. You have no idea if there might be a sewer plate that's opened. You have no idea what you're driving through. So there's a term that says drive around, do not drown. So don't go through that. Miller Place, we had a bluff slide. As crazy as it sounds, we had a nor'easter which dumped a lot of water, and we had a bluff slide up in Miller Place. And so it was a busy year in 2021, but coastal storms really are happening in the wintertime. We get them all the time. So they're very active. So tropical storms and hurricanes, both are strong tropical cyclones. They both have names. So when you hear a named storm, it usually starts out as a tropical storm. We go from a depression to a name, and then it can continue as a tropical storm and die off, or it can turn into a hurricane. Tropical storms have maximum sustained winds up to 73 miles an hour. So if it doesn't hit 73 miles an hour, it's a tropical storm. If it goes over that and it's sustained at 74 miles an hour or higher, it's officially designated as a hurricane. And we always say this, when was the last hurricane to hit Long Island? Well, it was Hurricane Gloria. Hurricane Gloria made landfall in 1985. And what we mean by that is any tropical system, a hurricane or a tropical storm that makes landfall directly on Long Island or is within 50 miles, then it's a hit on Long Island. We've only had tropical storm or tropical system, Hurricane Gloria, hit us in 85. It seems, because we've had other events occur, like Sandy. That was a superstorm. It was not a hurricane when it got up here, but it really didn't make landfall here. It made landfall in New Jersey. The 38 hurricane was the strongest to make landfall in Long Island. It was a Category 3. And remember, the population back then compared to now when 38 occurred. Superstorm Sandy in 2012 was not a hurricane, like I said, when it hit Atlantic City, but nearly 21,000 structures flooded or damaged or destroyed. 8,000 plus structures with damage, over 50% of their value, over 1.1 million cubic yards of debris. It created a lot of debris from a superstorm. So we don't have to have a hurricane, we don't have to have a tropical storm to make significant impacts.
Right, and that is the big takeaway here, is that it doesn't have to be a named storm, it doesn't have to be a hurricane to have huge impacts. Sandy was a classic example of that, but when we actually look at the numbers since Sandy too, Sandy at Coast Guard Station Moriches, the tidal gauge came in at 6.3 feet of surge at that point in time. Well, in our 2022 storm at the exact same tidal gauge was 5.4 feet of surge. In 2023, at the same tidal gauge that had 6.3 feet for Sandy, was 6.02 feet at Coast Guard Moriches Inlet. So just because it's not a named storm or a hurricane, we're seeing more frequent high tide surge events that are occurring. When we talk that, the 2023, December 2023 storm was only 0.2 of a foot difference from what the tidal surge that we saw at that same tide gauge was for Sandy. One of the problems that we faced with that helped to differentiate it was that it lingered over the top of us for so long and kept that water around for so long. These thankfully have been faster moving storms, so they're impactful, but it's not having that lingering flooding effect that Sandy had by pushing all that water in and sticking around over the top of us for a long time. But I think it's really important to know that we're hitting water surge threshold amounts that are very similar within, a foot or less of what we saw at that same tide gauge in Sandy. And these are storms that aren't getting any kind of names, and they're still, very dangerous. If they sat over the top of us for a while, we'd be looking at very similar effects as opposed to just the water coming in and quickly receding.
Exactly.
So I think you've probably seen this image a few times now. This is showing you the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season outlook. So this is what NOAA is predicting that we may see this season. So about 13 to 19 named storms, about 6 to 10 hurricanes, and about 3 to 5 major hurricanes. And I think it's really important to say here that this doesn't mean this is for Long Island in general. It is for the entire Atlantic coast that may potentially see these types of storms throughout this entire season. And the season starts June 1st to November 30th, but the peak of that season is really mid-August to late October.
And our friends at the National Hurricane Center and also at the local office for the National Weather Service, they always say it just takes one. So the named storm, and like Ryan is saying, it doesn't have to be a named storm. It could be a hurricane that degrades and it becomes a tropical depression when it comes up here, and then it slows down and it wreaks havoc. So regardless of whether it's a named storm or it's not a named storm, these Atlantic basin storms do definitely cause an issue. These statistics are based on a storm within 50 miles of Long Island for it to be an above average season. So they're looking at a 60% probability of above normal for this year. So it's an active storm season. So we always have to keep our eye looking. We look south all the time in Suffolk County Emergency Management.
So this was, as Doug mentioned, right? So the Superstorm Sandy, this is a snapshot of what that looked like back in 2012. You can see here that it made that curve right over there to really hit into New Jersey and the Atlantic coast over there.
And it pushed all of that water right towards us. So even though it didn't go over the island, it made an impact. So storms like Sandy and Hurricane Bob, which occurred in the early 90s, was 60 miles east of Montauk, caused a lot of problems on Long Island. Hurricane Bob was significant. They don't hit Long Island, but they definitely influence us. So I call these influencer storms. They have significant impact to us, so they influence us.
I mean, you can see from this image alone how big that storm was and how much of an influence it had all over.
That's it.
Right. And it's been more than a decade since then. So we've had an opportunity for vegetative growth to come back and things like that. One of the things that probably would have rendered a lot more damage in Sandy was if we hadn't had Irene right before that.
Right.
Within a year before that, we had Irene that cleared out a lot of cleared it out. I say it like it's a positive thing, right? It took away a lot of vegetative debris. We had a huge amount of vegetative debris during Irene because of the impacts that it had. So that minimized the amount that was left for Sandy. Now it's been more than a decade since then. So honestly, we would have an expectation that we would be looking at a lot of vegetative debris again as a result of another significant storm coming into our area because it's been so long since the last one. Although, everybody tries to make an effort to stay on top of tree trimming and clearing to learn from the lessons of these storms. You still have a lot of growth out there that would probably render us with significant problems.
Mm-hmm.
So when we come through these storms, regardless hurricane, nor'easter, coastal storm, our office, we issue we reiterate the issues, the warning products from the National Weather Service. And a lot of times you want to make sure that people understand the difference between a watch and a warning. So when we look at the ready for the green, we have a hazardous weather outlook. So we want you to get ready. It's a potential for a significant events up to 7 days in advance. And that's a very long time ahead because, as you know, weather's constantly changing around here. So we want you to just get ready. So whether that may be doing that potential tree trimming around your house or understanding what's going on outside, the forecast confidence around here would be about 30%. Then when we have these watches, we want you to get set. These are issued up to 48 hours in advance, and then the forecaster probably has a 50% of confidence in this forecast, 50% certain that this may be impacting your area. There could be a risk for weather hazards in or near the future, could pose a threat to life and property, so it's really important to have a plan of action in place. And then when we get to these warnings or advisories, it is time to go. Advisory is a weather hazard is occurring or imminent, whereas a warning is a weather hazard is occurring or incident as well. Weather hazards will pose a threat to life and property, so you want to take protective action. So whether that's sheltering in place, crouching down for those straight line wind events, we need to make sure that everything that you've planned ahead, making those plans, doing tree trimming and all that stuff is done ahead of these extreme warnings that we may get from the National Weather Service.
So what we want you to understand with this slide here is ready, set, go. Outlook, watch, advisory, and warning. And we at the county also send out messages related to each one of these categories when we get the information from the National Weather Service. So we work in tandem with them to make sure that everybody has this messaging. Ready, set, go, outlook, watch, advisory, and warning. So there's a whole host of products, they call them, that the National Weather Service sends out. And you'll notice some commonality between watches, advisories, and warnings. And I'll just say it right on top. Severe thunderstorm. There's a severe thunderstorm watch. There's a severe thunderstorm warning. And they want you to really pay attention to that. So there's tornado watches, warnings, hurricane, tropical storm, excessive heat, high wind, flash flood. That's a big one for us now. That's a lot in the focus. Under the warnings column here, we have a lot of repetition from the watches and advisories, but we have at the bottom of it called red flag warning that Allison talked about when we talk about fire potential. And the last one on the bullet that I have here is marine, because there's a whole host of marine advisory products that the National Weather Service puts out for our marine community, such as gale warnings, small craft advisory, storm warnings not associated with a tropical storm, or special marine warnings. So there's another whole host of products that the National Weather Service puts out that you should be aware of if you're a boating community. Us here on the land, we have to worry about severe thunderstorms, tropical storms, high wind warnings, high surf advisories if we're going to the beach, and things of that nature. So this is a significant amount of product that the National Weather Service puts out that you need to be aware of during the summer season. A lot of good information that they put out also.
So some of the services that we provide is our Suffolk Alert Notification System. This is a free resource that we have here in the county. Residents can sign up to receive any kind of notification at a county level. There's obviously a notification in place for the town level as well. We also have our shelter evacuation center mapping. Know your zone, so you can locate your storm surge zone. And we have Smart 911, which we'll get into. It's just a smarter way for you to provide information to the 911 operators. So looking at the emergency shelter and evacuation center locator tool, what you can do is you can put in your address and see what the nearest shelter may be towards your address. It's really important, and we said this earlier, is that These may not be open, so you must listen and wait for the announcements to see which one is opened on their shelter tool. This is what it looks like. These are all the potential emergency shelters or evacuation centers in this area. As you can see on the legend on the right, you can have one for emergency shelters, pet friendly if they're open, full, or closed, and then same thing with evacuation and emergency shelters if they're open, full, or closed. So in the event that we were to operate this, they would all come off the screen and you would only see the ones that would be available to you, and you can input your address to see how to get there. There's turn-by-turn directions, so you know how and where to go.
We say emergency shelters and evacuation centers. The difference between the two is an emergency shelter is where we have cots, water, facilities to sleep there. An evacuation center is if something local occurs where you have to leave your house. Let's say there's a propane tanker on the main road that flips over and starts leaking, and we have to do a 1 mile evacuation. So then you go to an evacuation center to seek refuge from that incident until it's safe to return to your house. So we put those two facilities on this locator tool. We have shelters. We have shelters, obviously, we said in the colleges. They're called Tier 1 shelters, but we also have Southampton High School. We have Hampton Bays High School. We have evacuation centers at Southampton Intermediate, Quogue Elementary, all the West Hampton schools are evacuation centers, and the Phillips Avenue Elementary School is also there. On a lower level, we have Hampton Bays Middle School. So there's a number of facilities available as emergency shelters and evacuation centers.
Right, and of course we also have other relationships from the town level with even some of our like faith-based community, whether it's the Greek Church, whether it's Blaze up in Flanders, where we can use those as evacuation centers as well that can hold a large number of people if we have some sort of a localized incident that affects just those areas.
So the other resource we provide is Know Your Zone. So knowing your storm surge zone. As you can see on this map, a storm surge zone is an abnormal rise of water generated by a storm over and above the predicted astronomical tides. Storm surge zones, also known as hurricane evacuation zones, are areas identified as potentially vulnerable to the storm surge during hurricanes or tropical storms. They're identified through zones A through D. And as you can see from the legend, they're all color-coded here. Zone A is at the highest risk of the storm surge. This zone includes areas that would flood first based on predicted inundation, and residents in these zones are often the first to be evacuated. Zone B is typically at the risk of a storm surge flooding from moderate hurricanes. Zone C and D are typically at risk for major hurricanes. And to find if you are in a storm surge zone, similar to the shelter and evacuation center tool, you would enter in your address and it will tell you which zone you are in. These are really important for you to understand where you live in the community and which zone you may be in the event that we call for an evacuation within that zone.
Excellent. And like we said, plan now, not later. So we'd like you to visit those sites. So how can you prepare? Most importantly is to create a family emergency plan. We want you to prepare before the storm for yourself, for your family, for your house, for your vehicle. We want you to think about emergency household supplies. We also want you to think about a go bag, which is very important to have.
Also, you want to talk about putting a plan together by discussing these various questions with your family or friends or the household to start that emergency planning and to start that kit, right? So how will I receive emergency alerts and warnings? Well, you are going to sign up for Suffolk Alerts or the Town of Southampton Alerts. There's those iPause alerts that we push out into those areas. News channels. Unfortunately, in this day and age, a lot of these alerts are also reiterated over social media. We talk about what is my shelter plan. So you want to know where you can go, whether that's a friend or a relative who might live nearby or out of those different zones. What is my evacuation route? And that's also really important to get out of your house as well as to get out of your area. I know that during one of Hurricane Irene or Tropical Storm Irene, I had 2 trees fall in front of my house and I could not get out at all. So it's important to understand where to go if that were to occur. What is my family or household communication plan? You want to identify a contact, such as a relative who lives out of state, for household members to notify that they are safe. It may be easier to make a long distance phone call than to call across town. So, an out of town contact may be in a better position to communicate amongst separated family members. You should also inquire about emergency plans at place where your family spends time, such as like a work, a daycare, school, faith organization, sports events, or commuting. You want to talk to community leaders, your colleagues, neighbors, or members of civic organizations about how you can work together in the event of an emergency. You will be better prepared to safely reunite with your family or loved ones during emergency if you think you're ahead and communicate with others in advance.
I think we covered a lot of this. Allison just mentioned communication out of town contact points, but also what I want to mention is the meeting place. Establish a location near your home, so it could be a local area that you're familiar with, and also have an area outside your neighborhood. When I was growing up in Brooklyn, my mother would always tell me, we're going to meet at Shea Stadium if something would happen, for those of us that remember where the Mets used to play. So we had a location near our house, which was the church around the corner. And if it was really bad, we'd meet at Shea Stadium. So we developed that kind of thing. So one thing you also want to make sure is that you have information on not only on your cell phone, but have that written down somewhere, because sometimes the cell phones don't work and we can't remember all those phone numbers that are on here. I mean, I can't remember anybody's phone number with this. I have a hard copy of the phone numbers at home, so I have that. In addition to that, in your family emergency plan, you need to think about the medical needs, including prescriptions and equipment. If somebody is on some sort of oxygen equipment, do you need extra batteries? Do you need extra bottles of things of that? You also need to think about folks that have disabilities or access and functional needs issues, separate and apart from the devices and equipment. And also, we have to remember our pets or service animals when we're creating our family emergency plan. Some of the household supplies, emergency supplies, this is a tough one. It's 3-day water supply. It's 1 gallon per person per day. That's the recommended amount of water to consume in a day. So we want to make sure that we have a plan for that. 3-day supply of food, first aid materials, flashlight, a battery-powered radio, extra batteries, some cash, credit cards, basic toolkit, pocket knife, can opener. Most importantly, to have a charger for your cell phone, an extra battery, a solar charger. Now, as a lot of people that are planning for emergencies, they have that. So on our website, we have a lot of this information listed for you. How can you prepare your property, your house and your property before the storm? Important thing is clear the gutters and downspouts. I live in a private community where we have a group come through and clear our gutters 3 times a year. There's a lot of stuff that collects in your gutters. Tree trim, the limbs that are close to the house. Every time there's a storm on Long Island, you see this tree that leans up against the house because it was old and it was damaged, or it wasn't properly addressed that it needed to be taken care of. So look at the trees that are around your house. Clear your yards of loose objects, especially when we get these storm warnings, furniture, grills, play sets, trash cans, because they become missiles. They fly around and impact windows and other things. If you have a boat, secure your boats, and if possible, get it out of the water and secure it. Fill your vehicle with gas, And for us now with EVs, make sure you're fully charged. Fill and turn off propane tanks. The reason why I want you to fill them up and then turn them off is because if there's an event and the propane tank's outside, it becomes an issue. We want to make sure that they're turned off. How can you prepare before the storm? Take inventory of personal belongings. Pictures are important, especially of the high-valued items. Your insurance company may require you to have pictures of things. So make sure you do that. Take pictures. Some of these are basic things, but people don't think of them. Compile copies of insurance policies and cards, recent photos, identifications, birth and marriage certificates, emergency contact lists. Hey, your thumb drive is the best thing for them. This works well as long as you got power. So if you have that thumb drive, that's a good stable medium for that. And then you get your computer up and running on a backup drive and you can have all these things. So these are important things to have. The go bag that we're talking about includes your family emergency plan, some non-perishable food. There's a lot of items listed here to have. We just want you to start thinking about putting together a go bag that if you have to leave for some reason, you have a bag ready. It might not include all these items, but start thinking about this. Photo ID, plastic bags, moist towelettes, pet food and supplies. In addition to that, you want to have a go bag for your pet, all right? Don't forget your pet. I'm sorry, I'm right here. Don't forget your pet. Prepare your pet for disasters. Your pets are important members of your family. This is why they should be included in your family's emergency plan. To prepare for an unexpected, keep your pet in mind. So while you're planning yourself, you have to include them. Make a plan, build an emergency kit for them. If you have a plan in place for you and your pets, you will likely encounter less difficulty, stress, and worry when you need to make a decision during an emergency, because then you have all the resources at hand so that you're not worried about, oh, did I do this? Did I do that? You have all these things. Food, keep several days of pet supplies, pet food, in an airtight, waterproof container. Water, have a water bowl for your pet. Medicines, very important. If your pet is on medication, make sure that you have an extra supply of medication for your pets. Keep copies of vaccination records, your vet's phone number, first aid kit. Talk to your veterinarian about what's appropriate for your pet in an emergency medical needs. A collar with an ID tag and a harness or leash. Include a backup leash and a collar and an ID tag. Have copies of your pet's registration information and other relevant documents in a waterproof container and available electronically on that thumb drive. Take a picture of you and your dog, or you and your cat. That's very important. When people say, hey, that's not your dog, you can show the picture. Very basic things. A travel bag, you need a crate or a sturdy carrier, especially if you're taking your pet to a pet shelter. And grooming items such as pet shampoo, conditioner, or other items in case you and your pet need some cleanup. Sanitation needs, a litter box, things like that, newspaper, paper towels, a picture of you and your pet, like I said, and familiar items. Bring toys for your pet to make them comfortable. And also, like for your children, toys for your children in this emergency kit to make them feel comfortable. Plan now so later on you don't have to worry about these things, and it makes the transition from the normal life to the crisis life easier.
So this is how we can reach you and stay informed from a county level. Suffolk Alert, as we mentioned before, is Suffolk County's official emergency notification system. Suffolk Alert, you would get alerts by text, email, and or voice. When you register, you can type in Suffolk Alerts, one word, or Suffolk Espanol to 67283, and you automatically enroll to receive any type of emergency alert from Suffolk County. We will go into Smart 911, which allows you to customize those alerts, but if you just want to register right now, you can do so by just texting Suffolk Alerts to 67283.
And at the same time that Suffolk alerts exist, the town of Southampton has our Notify Me system. And in that system, there are a variety of different lists that you can select from in terms of receiving different types of alerts. We have everything from dune road closures to some specific alerting groups for different communities. We most recently created one specific to Quogue Village in cooperation with the village mayor in Quogue, who wanted to be able to get out emergency alerts specific just to that area. We also have weather alerts groups that are on there, general emergency alerts. The Notify Me system doesn't just cover emergency stuff too. There's a whole slew of different lists that you can get on, whether it's from job opportunities and housing information and parks and recreation activities. That's our messaging system that we utilize from the town of Southampton to get information out there to the public. Some of those groups allow for some texting capability. We're looking at expanding upon that potentially going forward to add more texting capability in the future, but we also have emails that go out. And you might think, well, in an emergency, we have planned emergencies and we have unplanned emergencies. So obviously, if we're talking about something like a hurricane and we're 5 days out, we're on our 120-hour timeline in preparing for a hurricane to arrive, we're going to be sending out emails. You're going to be dialed into this. You're going to, know what's going on and be receiving those alerts leading up to it as well. So we likewise put everything that goes out through Notify Me up onto the town website. We also put it out on social media. Everything short of you having a carrier pigeon land at your doorstep. We try and target that messaging as best as we can to get it all out into the community. And that scannable QR code that is displaying on the screen is a viable code to get you to the Notify Me system. So if you scan that QR, it'll take you there. It'll probably land you onto the road closures, dune road closures, and Quogue Village page. But if you go into putting in your email address to start to receive messages through Notify Me, it will then link you to all of the other lists that are on there, and you can select what type of emergency alerts or regular notifications, for that matter, that you wish to receive. We, when it comes to the emergency alerts, if those are your subscriptions, you will strictly get emergency alerts. You're not going to receive any kind of, spam messaging or anything like that. The county system is the same way. This information isn't, sold to any third parties or anything. If it's a closure that's going to be impactful to your community or your potential commute, that's information that's going to go out there. It's not just, routine stuff. We are using this for emergency communications capability to get the word out to you, and these are great systems, and we've got even more capability beyond that that you can't sign up for. It's the wireless alerting network and other mechanisms that literally go to every single person in the population. So if we have an impending hurricane that we're in the target area for, where it's potentially going to make landfall, you're going to get those alerts that you've gotten before on your cell phones that just come out through the carrier over the tower and stuff like that. We will tap into every mechanism humanly possible to get that messaging out when we have a severe emergency situation.
And then another thing that the county also provides, as Ryan mentioned, in the town side, you can customize your alerts. You can also do this with Smart 911. Smart 911, it's really a two-way communication tool where you provide smarter information to us for your household, so you can list out your medical conditions, your medications, your allergies, how many household members you have, how many floors you have, what your car looks like. That information could be built into a safety profile, and that information is only brought over to the 911 dispatchers from Suffolk County Police Department or Suffolk County Fire Rescue and Emergency Services Communications Department, and they can see that information to better help first responders assist you in a crisis. You can also sign up for our different lists in there as well. We have a list for the Parks Department, Office of the Aging. We have our visitor stay a while, stay informed list. We have ones for emergency service providers, so you can also customize your alerts there. It also allows us to communicate back with you. So those people that create these safety profiles and list out their vulnerabilities in the event that we had a hurricane or we had to evacuate, we can isolate those vulnerable populations to better send resources to help assist evacuate those people out. So similar to Suffolk Alerts, you can also text that Suffolk SMART to 67283 to create your safety profile today.
And Smart 911 is a fantastic system. You can put as much or as little information into it as you'd like. So the things that are up there, if you don't want to put certain medical information in, you don't have to put certain medical information in. Many people might remember the top finder stickers on
Yes.
on windows of houses years ago. In the fire service, we've largely gotten away from those because people sell houses, kids grow up. There's still a window sticker on there, and the kid's been out of the house for the last 20 years, but nobody ever peeled that sticker off the window. So it's really not a trustworthy mechanism of knowing what's in there, what's not in there. This is kind of like a virtual tot finder sticker nowadays, right? This information goes to dispatch and more of our public safety answering points throughout the county now, and all the different, Southampton Town Police Department, a lot of our East End police departments are on the exact same system now that the county's on. So they have the capability of seeing these enhanced 911 profiles on their screens. And so this allows good information to get to the dispatchers so that they can relay it to the first responders when seconds count. They can say, if you put information about how many people are in the household and it says that there's 5 people in the house, they can communicate that to the responding entity that when they're coming in, if it's the fire department, that communication can go over to the fire department. Hey, there should be 5 people in this household. If they pull up and there's only 2 people standing on the front lawn, they know to start asking questions right away. Where are the other 3? Are they visiting family? Are they staying at friends' houses? Where are they? Do we need to go in and start to search for those people right away? Or are there 5 outside? And we know at the very least the people are out safe, and now we're going to work on just extinguishing that fire as opposed to having to find the people first and then work that at the same time. So it's good for that. It's been embraced very heavily by people within the autistic community because you can put information in about specific needs and specific conditions that might impact people's ability to interact with one another. So you may have someone that can dial 911, can communicate that there's a problem, but if I walk up to them at a scene and put my hand on their shoulder, it's going to turn into a negative encounter between me and that person. If I can put that into the profile, it can change that interaction and make it a more potentially positive interaction when first responders go to meet with that person. So Smart 911 is a huge resource. It's available county-wide. It's not specific to any one township or one half the county versus another. It's county-wide, and it's a great system. Even if the profile doesn't pop up on the screen, dispatch centers have a way to push the calls between each other, and it's also utilized in Nassau County too. So if you're traveling from, the city to Suffolk County, or you're traveling to work in Nassau County, whatever it happens to be, you need to make a 911 call. It's a great system that can pull up some good information.
The other good thing about the Smart 911 information that you put into the system, it does not stay stale. It doesn't become stale. It will contact you via mail or text, email or text to say, is your information up to date? And it'll do that, I believe, every 6 months.
Every 6 months.
So if you sign up for this and you put good information in there, it will remind you periodically because your medication may change, or some situation in the house may change. So it always is reliable data that's in here.
Other considerations, right? If you see something, say something. Reporting suspicious activity is everyone's duty. If you observe some suspicious activity, do not take direct action. Don't confront the individual. Don't reveal your suspicions. We want you to call this number and let us know what it is that you observe. Who did you see? Where did you see it? When did you see it? And why it is suspicious. This is very important for everyone to please, if you see something, say something. I know we spent a lot of this evening talking about what we can do for you, what our office does in general, but we want to take a moment about how you can help us. So there are quite some volunteer opportunities in Suffolk County at the county level. One of them is the volunteer in the police service, where you can become an auxiliary police officer and go through extensive training. Another is our community emergency response team. These group of individuals help us in the Office of Emergency emergency management with our operations, whether it's the Emergency Operations Center, sheltering, evacuation, a great group of people. And then we have our Medical Reserve Corps for those people that may hold medical license. These group of volunteers were utilized during the COVID-19 vaccination pods. We had doctors volunteering their time, pharmacists, nurses giving out shots. We were able to give out 3,000 vaccinations in one day because half of those individuals were volunteers from the community. So please, if you want to do something to better prepare yourself, be a better prepared neighbor, look at these volunteer opportunities, how you can better help us in Suffolk County. Also, we're always, for our volunteer service, always looking for a few good neighbors. You can volunteer. We have 109 volunteer fire departments in Suffolk County, and about 28 or 26 EMS, emergency medical services within the county as well. We have junior programs that people can start out and they can learn how to become a volunteer in Suffolk County. And then we do have the SERVS program, which assists those young men and women who are volunteering their time in fire or EMS with some college tuition. So it's a great opportunity.
There was a lot of information that we gave to you tonight. What we want you to take away is being prepared can mean knowing what to do and when to do it. Being prepared can also mean knowing what not to do, like drive through a flooded area. We don't want you to do that. And so be prepared and stay informed before, during, and after an event. Before we close out, I just want to say, when we have an emergency and we need to respond, we don't go through this as individuals. We go through it as a community. We go through it as a neighborhood. We don't go through it individually. So what I'd like each of you to do is to reach out to your neighbor. Talk about some of the things we spoke about tonight. I need you to be ambassadors for our program. I need you to be ambassadors for Smart 911. We need to have more people sign up for Smart 911 because we need information to be given out to people. We need information from them to know how to better prepare. So I need you to be ambassadors for emergency management here on Long Island. I would really appreciate that you speak to your neighbors and then your neighbors talk to others and it grows. It becomes a movement. So I would really like that as part of our takeaway tonight. So being prepared before, during, and after event also involves your community, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much to the county for coming out, to Allison and Doug for helping to put on this presentation for us this evening. And also, of course, thank you to Legislator Welker for helping to set this up and sponsor this this presentation this evening. And we look forward to being able to put this onto the town's website, onto CTV, so that this stays, live and active and accessible for people to be able to continue to have the information readily available. And it also now, will live in that space so that if we do have, a weather event coming our way or something, we can make sure that it becomes one of our prime display items so that people can get the information that they need and refresh on some of the information that we've covered tonight. Over the course of this presentation and have it all at their fingertips. So thank you everyone for joining us. Legislator, you want to say some closing remarks as well? Or
I just want to say thank you. You're quite right, Doug. It was a tremendous amount of information, but all of it is valuable. And I think the most important part is the plan early, plan now part of it, but also, as you said, all three of you, the connecting to Smart 911 for our community. And I just wanted to say there's so much information that's available, whether it be on the website or in Ryan's office and the county offices and our office and on websites as well, that would be super valuable if in addition to this presentation. So thank you to each of you for a wealth of information this evening. Take care.
thank you. Good night, everyone.